it's Stella from Meeple University, and this is Luke. Hey, Luke.
Hello, how you going?
Hello, good, thank you. How are you?
Pretty good.
Thanks for being here.
No worries.
I bring Luke again after you met seen Luke as in the video in Quest video or Avalon video versus an Avalon, which I will link in the description, because Luke has got a really vast experience in social deduction games. So you've played, I don't know, like hundreds maybe of social deduction games, thousands of Avalon games, Werewolf.
A lot.
Yeah, a lot. So here we are. Luke is the social deduction division of Meeple University that will be able to hopefully help you in deciding what games to play with, or what type of players you are, and what you think, like what we think you like this particular game than the other social deduction game, because of what. So we're gonna explain it, we're gonna delve into that, we're gonna show a few games that you might be interested or not interested or try to avoid, because that's probably not your game. But again, this is based on our opinion. Right?
That's right. Yeah, it's subjective. All this is subjective, but the reason it's not like a top 10 social deception games is because it is highly subjective.
It's highly subjective, yeah.
And it depends on so many different circumstances, the types of players you're playing with, where you're playing it, how long you want to play for, all those kinds of things. So, there's just a good selection of games that you might want to play depending on what type of player you are.
And if we have the video like instructional or review or other things, we'll link in the video description as well. So if you're interested in a particular game that you want to dig in further, then you'll be able to refer that to our other videos. Hopefully that will help. And what's very important thing here is hopefully you will enjoy your play. That's what we want, right? This is social deduction games. Things can get a little heated at times. As you've witnessed, you witness more because you play more. And this is just a game. At the end of the day, you want to have fun with your friends, right?
Exactly right.
All right, with that, let's get into the first one.
Okay, so the first one I want to talk about is a game called Deception, Murder in Hong Kong. And I love this game. I think it's a great social deduction game on its own. But importantly, why I wanted to put it in here and what makes it kind of a standout and unique is that it's, in a lot of social deduction games, you'll find that they can be quite confronting for new players, especially players new to social deduction.
Or not used to, or not usually play that sort of game.
You'll get players who are making very direct accusations and very, very full-on accusations against other players, and as a new player to be on the receiving end of that, it can be really confronting and really hard to deal with. And it can, I've seen a lot of people say, I don't play social deduction games.
Yes.
I played Secret Hitler once and I never again. It was too, ran away in tears. And I often think, there's some people, different people like different types of games, but there's also some people who I feel like have just had a bad experience and just didn't have the right introduction to it. I feel like Deception, Murder in Hong Kong is the perfect introduction to social deduction games. You get the sense of it, you get the theme of it, you get the idea of that night phase and who's good and who's evil. But importantly, when you're playing the game, it's not so confrontational. When you're looking at the tableau in front of each player and you're making accusations, you're not so much accusing the player, you're accusing the tableau in front of them. And it's less confrontational, and players can more easily say, no, I think it's more likely to be them, or it's more likely to be that, or and it really takes the personal element out of it, while still just being a really fun game to play. And
you're absolutely right about the non-confrontational bit, but also there are information so you can accuse that person based on that. So there's more information that you can go by. It's unlike some others that are based on body language or like different tips that you have to you learn by playing the games more often. But this is absolutely for new players, and more information's out there that you can go based on, and it's just more beginners friendly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also, I should add that playing the forensic investigator.
It's so fun. You love that one.
It's probably the most fun you'll have in a social deception game, more so than any other game I can think of. But that's kind of why that's here.
Yep. So we're not going to go through the rules in details, by the way, but the session Made in Hong Kong is a game about good versus evil, and you're trying to find the murderer and the accomplished. Is that?
You're trying to. The good team is trying to accuse the murderer.
Yes.
And know what the murder weapon was and what the clue left behind the scene was.
Yep.
The accomplice will be trying to help the murderer by throwing off suspicion.
Yes.
In this game, I've played it quite a few times, and it's rare. It's very rare that the murderer gets away with it.
Okay.
But it's still fun.
No, because
to play
you were the forensic investigator. That's the fun part for you, and that is maybe you wanna play a few times until you become forensic investigator rather than dealt randomly, right?
Yeah, I think that the main thing though here is that it's a game that you can introduce people who are kind of new to the genre to.
For sure. Yeah.
Next up. We're going to talk a little bit about Spyfall, and for those who haven't played Spyfall before, it's a game. It's got similar themes to other social deduction games. Everyone gets a hidden role at the start of the game, but the role is not about you. The role is a location. So everyone, except for one player at the table, gets a location. It could be an amusement park, it could be a police station, it could be a space station. And one player just gets a card that says Spy. And through a series of questions directed around the table, it's up to the spy to work out where we are, and it's up to the other players to work out who the spy is. So that's kind of generally how the game plays out.
Yep.
And it's a really fun game because you get to be very creative with how you ask and how you answer questions. It really tests your ability to think outside the box.
Oh, absolutely.
And to work out when people are just being a little bit too vague.
Yeah, you can't be too vague, you can't be too accurate. And if I'm the spy, I'll be so panicked. Like, oh my God, I'm the spy. Oh my God. No, because there's only one spy.
Yeah, that's right. And I think for me, Spyfall is that perfect blend of kind of those party games and social deduction games, right? It's a really easy game to bring out, to explain really quickly.
Yeah.
You can play through it really quickly, and it ticks a lot of boxes.
A lot of social deduction games that plays really quickly I enjoy as well because it plays really quickly. So if you stuff up, that's it. The end of the game is soon, and then you move into the next one, right? So that is Spyfall.
That's Spyfall. Okay, next up we've got a similar kind of game. Fake Artist Goes to New York.
Ooh.
And this is, I suppose if you think about it, if Spyfall was kind of a little bit like, social deduction meets Codenames.
Oh yeah.
Then Fake Artist Goes to New York is a little bit like social deduction meets telestrations.
Oh yeah. That's right.
So the way it works is everyone has a pen.
Yep.
And there is a little whiteboard that's passed around, and everyone is just adding a line to
or
that
a
drawing.
dot or whatever. Yeah.
You put your pen down, you pick it up, and then you pass it on.
Yeah.
And the objective is very similar to that in Spyfall, where you've got a lot of people who know what we're trying to draw, but you've got one person who doesn't. And that one person, their job is to determine what it is we're trying to draw, and the job of everyone else is to work out who the spy is. So very similar kind of setup, but for those people who like to have a little bit of fun with drawing.
With drawing, yeah. I found that it's a little bit less stressful as the spy in Fake Artist because you can
That's
just
true.
follow it like, rather than question. Question was like, oh, are you gonna get told or not? So it's a little bit more timid for fake artists, and it's mainly like it's the drawing. It's less confrontational as well, rather than the Spyfall.
That's right. It's a very easy game to get new players into.
Yeah, and it's how fun is this? Like, but I know Tarrant always draws obscure things. It's consistently obscure. That's probably a good thing for him.
He does. I always think he's a spy in those games. I'm always wrong, but.
There you go. So that is, I highly recommend it. By the way, it's one of the fun games that we keep bringing to the meetup. And I have to share one more story where you were the person that was distributing the fake artists, and everyone. Come on, tell that story. Everyone, you made.
Okay. So sometimes I'm just a shit stirrer, right? So so normally in the game someone gets the spy. Someone's determined to be the spy.
One person.
Everyone else gets the where what we're trying to draw, right?
Yeah.
And so the person gets the spy gets a blank slate, right?
Yeah.
So I took up all the slates.
Or just X or something.
I pretended to write on each of them, but they were all blank, and so I just passed them each around just to watch what would happen, to watch everyone pretend to know where we were.
But no one knows what you're drawing.
Hilarious.
That was hilarious. That was like when we reveal, like, who's the fake artist, we point at the person, and then we reveal everyone is blank.
Everyone was a fake artist.
That was really fun. I was like, I thought of that, but like I didn't think that you would do that in that game. But that was really fun. So yeah, that's recommended as well. Do that if you want to bring a little bit of chaos in the fake artist game.
If you want your friends to hate you.
We're still friends. That tells you something, right?
All right. Next up, we're going to talk about one of the oldest social deduction games that I can think of, and that's Werewolf.
That's also Mafia, I think it's called.
Yeah, it's called Mafia in some places, although technically they're slightly different, but they're essentially the same
Werewolf.
game.
And this is not One Night Ultimate Werewolf. This is
correct.
What is it actually called? Werewolf.
The more modern version they call Ultimate Werewolf.
Ultimate Werewolf, yes.
But essentially, you've got your common social deduction tropes. You've got the good team, who are the villagers, and you've got the evil team, who are the werewolves. And there's lots of special roles. So there are some roles in the good team that when they die, they're allowed to take other players out with them. Or there's a seer who gets to check players and find out whether they're a werewolf or not.
We've got video on that, by the way, so check that out. I'll link it below.
And so the reason I bring up Werewolf is because I find it's just a great game to get together people socially for. It's not very heavy. You can get people together. You can get a large group of people together, right? So you can play. I've played games of Werewolf where we played with 30, 40 people. Yeah. You can do all that, right? It's not going to be your very tight game full of strategy and nuance where you have to pay close attention to, but it doesn't need to be, right? It's a game where you can just get together. Maybe you go out to a pub and you have a large group of people and you play together, and it's a good time. It's good just to get people together socially. They don't need to pay very close attention to the game. It's a nice little thing just to get people together and talking. Indeed.
And I think there is a host as well in Werewolf. No host, like, is it called a host? A host? Yeah. A narrator? Narrator?
Yeah, there's someone who administers the game, and it's their job to keep track of who has what role and to make sure that the night roles are called out in the right order and to determine who's dead and who's not. And
I've got a story. It's a slight story that you mentioned the pub. So at one time in the pub, you order drinks and food and whatever. So in Werewolf there are night faces, right? So there's that right moment where the waiter was bringing a whole lot of food and drink, and that was a night face. So here comes the waiter, and then look around, everyone's closed their eyes, and then he had no idea what's going on. They're like, and then went back. I was like, well, that's the game.
Yep.
And that was I think that was here in Melbourne, so we've got somebody who runs it like once a month now. Dave.
That's right.
Yeah.
For anyone in Melbourne,
Yeah.
look up the Melbourne. What's it called? Melbourne
Werewolf,
something like that.
Pub Werewolf.
You'll
or
find
something?
find a meet-up for a group that meets monthly in St Kilda, and that's where we are.
Is that where people can find you? Get your signature. Take photo of it.
I'm there from time to time. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So, check that out. If you are happen to be in Melbourne or visiting Melbourne and wants to play Werewolf. But I've seen Werewolf played online as well. Because Tom Thassel, I don't know if he still does that. I joined 1 or 2 of his online Werewolf games, so he's the moderator. It was quite fun. Like when you close your eyes, you like open your eyes. That works in video call. So that's interesting. So that was during lockdown. So that was a quite interesting Werewolf play online.
All right. Next game to talk about, I think, is Two Rooms and a Boom. I'll get to why I'm talking about this one in a second. But essentially, for those of you who haven't played it before, it's another very, very light social deduction game. Very easy to explain, very easy to get into. Essentially, what it is, you can have as many players as you want. This is one of those games where you can play with hundreds of people if you want to. Right? But as the name suggests, there are 2 rooms. All the players are separated out into 2 separate rooms. And there is a boom. So everyone gets a special roll card, which will tell you which team they're on. They're either one of the good guys, one of the bad guys. And one of the bad guys has the boom. They have the bomb. One of the good guys is the president. A very US-centric game, obviously. And the objective of the good team is to make sure at the end of the game, the bomb is in the different room to the president. The objective of the bad guys is to make sure at the end of the game, the bomb is in the same room as the president. And that determines the winning team. There's some special roles that do various things, but essentially the way it works is there in each room, you'll vote on which players you want to change rooms. And so every round there'll be a change, people will change different rooms, different information will be revealed. And so then that's kind of how you work out how you want to get your players positioned in the right way. And the reason I'm talking about it is just because it's such an easy game to teach, such an easy game to play. Doesn't require everyone to be 100% committed. You can go in there and be chatting and easy like that. It's something I really think would make a really great kind of like corporate game, like a little icebreaker.
Team building, icebreaker.
Team building thing, good for people just to kind of, at an event, just to have a little bit of fun with. It doesn't get too heated, doesn't require any great understanding of the game or anything like that. And and it's just a really fun little game for a large group of people to get into, in the same way that Werewolf is, but much shorter to play and much quicker
easier
and easier to administer.
Very true.
Okay, next up, I think it's important to recognise with social deduction games, usually you get games which have a large player count, right, and require a large player count, right? Like you think about games like Avalon, where you're talking 5 players minimum, absolute minimum, right? And often, we don't have that many players to play with. So what can you do then? There's 2 games in that vein that I want to call out here. One is Don't Mess with Cthulhu, which is a very fun game where you've got a set of tiles that you're trying to play or not play in certain ways, and the good guys are trying to get the elder signs played, and the bad guys are trying to get Cthulhu played. And you can play this with, I think it's minimum of 4 players and maximum of 6. So it's really low player count and really works really well. Very quick, easy to play, a lot of fun. Gives you that social deduction, scratches that social deduction itch without you needing 10 players to play it, right? And the other one I'll call out as well is One Night Ultimate Werewolf, which is a great game, not only because it accommodates a low player count. I think you can actually play that one with 3. I don't know that I'd recommend it with 3, but you can definitely play it with lower player counts. And it's also just really quick, right? You can play it. I think games take 5 or 10 minutes each to play. It's really a really great way to get some quick social deduction done with potentially a low player count. Okay, next up, I want to talk about Secret Hitler.
Ding, ding, ding.
And Secret Hitler stands out to me just because it is the game that has come closest, in my mind, in my heart, to knocking off Avalon as the premier social deduction
Which
game.
you're going to
right?
talk about later. Mm-hmm.
Oh, spoilers.
No!
So Secret Hitler is played in a very similar way. You've got good teams, bad teams. The good team slightly outnumbers the bad team. The bad team kind of knows who each other are. But there's enough different about it that after playing Avalon for 3 hours and going, oh, I'm exhausted, I don't think I can play anymore, and someone says, hey, you want to play Secret Hitler? I go, oh, yeah, okay. So, it is kind of refreshing to play Secret Hitler, even though it has those same kinds of things associated with it. It addresses some of the issues that are present in Avalon, right? So in Avalon, you'll often, particularly with experienced players, you'll have the long voting phases where you'll have one rejected vote after another rejected vote after another rejected vote before you'll finally get a mission to go through, and games can really drag on. Whereas Secret Hitler, it really forces the players to play more quickly with a maximum of 3 rejected missions before a random policy will be flipped on the table, right? And also it adds a lot of interesting plays as well with with special powers that the president can use when missions or when fascist policies are played. And also, it's got that really fun mechanic of Hitler as well, where if Hitler can fly under the radar to the end of the game and get elected chancellor, then they can throw their hands up and say, I have won the game. Yeah. So it's a lot of fun, really does some unique stuff, but at the same time, it's a very solid game, really good mechanics, really requires all players to be involved, and every player kind of has a role to play in ensuring their team's victory. But yeah, it's
not really for beginner though.
It's
Probably
not.
No,
Yeah. It is one of those games where it can get quite heated.
Yeah.
And if you don't play with the right people, you might not have a good time, right? So it's one of those games where if you've got a group of people who are into social deduction, it's definitely one of the ones that you'll be playing. Okay, next up, I want to talk about Blood on the Clocktower.
The only game that we actually bring it up because this is the biggest social deduction game ever in history. But it is beautiful, and I can't even take it off. Can you take it off? Unsleeve this? Yeah, there you go. So it's like a fake book sort of thing, and it opens like I haven't actually. Let's not open that for completely because it might be a mess inside. Yeah.
Beautiful.
So it is gorgeous, it's beautiful. It's got like the most components, paper and thick and heavy and all of the above. But that is part of the game as well. You need this for the game. Yeah,
in production quality, second to none.
It's like, out of this world, right?
Yeah. And it's an interesting game to play. It's so I've played it a few times now. It's similar. I would say it's kind of like
Werewolf.
if Werewolf and Avalon had a baby, it would be Blood on the Clocktower.
Okay.
In that it has that variable player count. You can adjust the roles depending on how you feel at the time, but also more so than Werewolf, it has some structure to it, right? It has some more a more structured play, so that it's more likely that each player has each team has a reasonable chance at winning the game. But at the same time, every player has an important role to play in the game, which you don't necessarily always get in Werewolf. So
there's kind of no player elimination compared to Werewolf. Werewolf, you get player eliminations sort of. Oh yeah.
Yeah, in Werewolf,
Sort of,
you
yeah,
get
yeah,
that player
yeah, yeah.
elimination problem where players will be out of the game early, and if the game goes on for another hour, they're just sitting there twiddling their thumbs. Whereas Blood on the Clocktower actually deals with that really well, where you lose your special power, but you maintain the ability to talk to other players, to sway decisions, and you maintain a vote to play in the game. So that's kind of a really interesting way to deal with that player elimination side of things. But otherwise, yeah, it plays very similar to Werewolf, I would say. In terms of who this is for, that's an interesting question because it's a game with a lot of complexity to it, more so than any other game, any other social deduction game I can think of, and it's all in the roles, right? Whereas you think about a game like Avalon and you've got kind of the vanilla good guy, the vanilla bad guy, and then just some special roles. In Blood on the Clocktower, everyone has a special role, and everyone's role does something different. And as a result, what you end up with is a game where if you're playing it with experienced players, then that kind of high-level play style, it's got really quite a high ceiling as to how far it can evolve. Whereas if you get then some new players coming into that, it's quite difficult for them to break in if they're playing with a lot of experienced players. So that's one of the challenges that I think it has. But for those who are fully into social deduction and they're really willing to get over that learning curve.
You can watch the game, a few games first.
Yeah, it really does give
Immersive,
it gives you a lot to think about
in
a social deduction game.
It's also made by an Australian publisher, which they are in Sydney. There you go, Blood on the Clocktower. Have you played this? Let us know what you think as well for this one.
What am I going to talk about next, Stella?
That's your favourite game ever.
Oh,
or maybe not.
What is that?
How come it's so hard?
Terraforming Mars?
Yes, your other games that you like that is not social deduction.
Okay, we've got to talk about Avalon. Yep. We have to talk about Avalon.
There you go.
For anyone who's seen the other videos that I've done in this
we do have videos.
On Meeple University, you knew this was coming, right? But we're going to talk about Avalon now.
I'll link it into this video description below so you can see all the tips, all the roles, and even how to play.
So Avalon is the game that I keep coming back to. No matter how many times I've played it, it still creates those memorable experiences for me every single time I play it. You play it with different. The game is entirely different depending on who you're playing it with, regardless of the exact setup of the game, and that's really what makes it unique. And it's really tight in terms of its mechanics, in terms of how it plays out, and it's really well balanced, I would say, between the good team and the evil team, obviously depending on the roles that you pick. And as a result, it's a game that I think has really captured the essence of what social deduction is about. And I think for most people who play a lot of social deduction, they probably think of Avalon as the archetype of a social deduction game. And so I think of it as, I really enjoy playing it, obviously, but I think that it has a lot of good things going for it. It is not as difficult, I would say, as Blood on the Clocktower for new players to get into with experienced players. It's pretty quick to explain, but then there's quite some complex strategy that evolves.
Yeah,
from
that's
that.
evolving that. That's why we had that tips for roles and for generic tips of how to play and how to enjoy playing Avalon. Because it's, if for someone who's a little bit timid, it might be, what's going on? I know nothing. So what do I do? So that could be a bit like that for the first experiences of Avalon.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it might not be for everyone, but with the, after a few plays, then that becomes like a really good game.
And more so than any other social deduction game, it's really stood the test of time. Avalon's been out for 10 years, and you'll still go to board game events, and I would say you see Avalon more commonly than any other social deduction game.
Probably you hosting it, Luke.
But it is ubiquitous. It is everywhere, and it's for a good reason, right? Like it's still fun to play. Many have tried to improve on the formula to emulate it. We've talked about Secret Hitler, which does a good job of it, but it's a different game. It's not necessarily a better game. And indeed, the designer Don Esrich has made a follow-up to Avalon to try and improve on it again, which is called Quest, which is essentially Avalon 2. And even that, I enjoy Quest, but I think I would still recommend Avalon over it, just because Avalon is just easier to get new players into. And so Avalon for me is the one game that if you're into social deduction, if you start playing it more and more, it's the one game that's going to be in everyone's collection.
I've enjoyed playing many games of Avalon. I've learned a lot from Luke of Avalon, and play with Luke. Poor me, I know. And I really learned a lot from, as a beginner, I can see myself playing Avalon, and it's okay. It's not that intimidating. I made lots of mistakes, but with the right players, like Luke here, will be able to help me if I make a mistake. Oh, okay, so that's what I did wrong. So to make it also still enjoyable, although I was new in the game. Does that make sense? So that's really important. And if you are new and you are interested, I really highly recommend it to watch Luke's and our Avalon tips guide. That is we've got the beginner's tip and the intermediate and the advanced tip. So whether you're beginner or advanced, we got you covered, don't worry. And that's it. That is for now. If you want us to cover any, obviously there are so many other social deduction games, we just pick select few to kind of represent the genre of the type of social deduction, and more coming. So if you want us to maybe cover a particular one, maybe we'll be able to, please write in the comment sections below. I would really personally like to thank Luke for coming over and helping you to choose the right social deduction game. Hopefully this has been helpful. Thank you, Luke.
Thank you.
And if you find this helpful, you can please hit the like button. That'll be really helpful. And subscribe to us if you haven't already done so. We do things like this, review other videos, different type of games, how to play, and live playthrough on the weekend. I'm also on socials, so find me there as well. Don't find Luke. Luke won't be on socials. He will ignore you. Not kidding. He's not a social person, in a type of social media person. And hopefully, thanks for watching, and hopefully we'll see you next time. Bye.